Hi guys, it's Wayne Weitzel from DFS Green.
And I'm Christian Pilecchia with Slater Construction.
And today we're here to talk to you about how to fast track the FM pipeline. How do we get more young people to enter the career field, and how can we use our local IFMA chapter resources to accomplish that? As many of you know, there's a problem out there. The IFMA Foundation has a study which shows that in the next 5 to 10 years, we have about 50% of the FM managers and directors retiring. And the problem is that less than 8% of the people in our career field are under 35. So that means a significant shortage and a significant talent pipeline gap. And Jeff Taffel and the foundation is working very hard to bridge that gap and have a lot of great resources and ideas. And quite frankly, they've inspired both of us many times to take this up. And what we found together is there's a few ways that the local chapter can address these issues, and the heavy lifting's already been done in a lot of cases by the foundation, by some of these other organizations we're going to talk about, and but really it's how to solve that problem of that talent gap. And Christian, with your experience, not only as an educator but in growing workforces and pipelines, how do you see us dealing with this problem?
Well, one of the ways that I see us being able to solve this problem is I would like for chapters to become more involved in recruitment and placement of facility professionals in their local areas. And what this will do is it will satisfy the intentions of GWI to help the profession of facility management, but also increase the membership of chapters. And there are many ways that we can do this, which we will discuss as we continue this, but basically it's to get the chapters more involved in local high schools, local colleges, and adult schools. One of the major problems with facility management is that many people don't know of this profession. So the number one issue is to create awareness, and that has to be done at a younger age. So going to high schools and doing simple programs to help create awareness of facility management. The way that I see us solving this problem is by getting the chapters more involved locally. And by doing this, we would help solve two problems. One, we would increase the membership of the chapters, and second, we will be able to fill this pipeline in the initiative from the IFMA Foundation. There are three avenues that I see that the chapters can get involved. One is in high schools to help create awareness of the facility management profession, which is the number one problem. Second is by getting involved in local colleges and by creating degree programs and certification programs. Third are adult schools, by helping transitioning adults that may already have a lot of skills that are applicable to facility management. And by doing these three things, you will help fill the pipeline and increase the relevance and size of your chapter.
So it's interesting, Christian, you and I have talked, and one of the things that we say to young people is in high school is that you can graduate high school and make 80 grand without any college debt. I mean, granted that's here in California, but we're seeing this all over the FM universe, this talent gap. So there's an opportunity there for young people to enter into this field without carrying a lot of that college debt, and we can, as you're saying, we can fast track that process. And it's interesting, I actually did a career fair once at a high school. We each had our own little room in this hallway, and on the front door of the room they wrote what the occupation was. So there was chef, there was lobbyist, there was attorney, there was all these different things, and I had facility manager, and nobody was coming into my room. Nobody knew about what it was, because people fall into the career of FM. And so I quickly ran out there and I erased on the dry erase board facility manager, and I wrote, make $80,000 out of high school. And you know what? I filled the room. And I showed them some pictures of facilities and what it is and so forth. And for the first time, I think that these people really understood what facilities was. It's not, when you're in high school or college, facilities is that little the van going across campus, the guy that unclogs the toilet or fixes the locks. So defining what FM is, and as IFMA is doing, making FM a career of choice is absolutely critical right now. So there's, as you mentioned, there's a few ways that IFMA is doing this, and some other organizations that we'd like to talk about that, as you mentioned, could benefit the local chapter, make FM more relevant, and make people more aware of it. So let's start with Skills USA. So Skills USA. So the first time we heard about this was through Jim Zerbel. Many of you might have seen the Wiggly guy or have seen him around at World Workplace talking about this. And I have to admit, I had too, but I didn't really engage with him, and I didn't really understand what it was that what he was talking about. And it was only until Christian and I were at the Foundation Gala with Jim and with Peggy McCarthy that we really understood what this is and the potential power for fast-tracking people into the career of FM. So they inspired us. They kind of, as people want to do in IFMA, they kind of corner you and voluntold you into things. But we're really glad that we spent that time with Peggy and Jim, because we came back and contacted our local Skills USA region. Now, just so you know what Skills USA is, it is a competition that high schoolers enter to compete in anything from architecture and drafting to welding to robotics to photography, but really heavily emphasized on the trades, woodworking, carpentry, drafting. And the first one that you and I went to had 1,000 kids there competing, and they compete in these segmented little groups, and they move on from their local to their regional to eventually to state to national competitions to win these competitions in their specific areas they're competing in. And what Jim has so smartly done is he's figured out a way to get a facilities competition within Skills USA. And the advantage there is that we can create interest among these high schoolers in facilities as a career. We can also begin to see talent coming out of that we can connect with IFMA. So it's actually very interesting, and the way that Jim has advised us to do it is actually very, it's intuitive, it creates a very organic growth within Skills USA. So rather than just going in and saying, hey, let us have a facilities competition in your organization, Jim's advice was to go in and volunteer, get to know the people, get to know how the competition works, and volunteer as a judge. So it's interesting that the Christian and I, our first one was the competition that was in Sacramento for one of the Northern California regions, as I said, with 1,000 kids there. And we were judges. We volunteered for judging the drafting competition and the mechanical drafting competition, I believe it was.
It was very inspiring to see each of these students be so passionate about the particular competition that they were in and the profession they were heading into. The second one in Silicon Valley was almost as big, and the students were equally as enthusiastic.
As you all know, in the chapter, bandwidth and volunteering hours are, they're precious. And to get somebody to actually take on something can be challenging, especially if they have to invent it and build it. This is something that's already done. So let me just recap the steps here. Contact Jim Zerbel. That's the first thing. He can get you up to speed and get you the resources you need. But in your local area, your local Skills USA region, go to the website, Skills USA, and go down by region. Find out where the competitions are and contact the director for that competition and say, I'd like to volunteer. And you can pick something that you're good at, if it's carpentry or construction like you, for example. And if not, you don't have to have a lot of expertise in the specific area, because they give you an answer key. They make it very easy. And the answer key is very specific, and you can follow it. And it doesn't take much effort. Yeah, it's a Saturday, right? It's a Saturday out of your life. But to really see, as you mentioned, these passionate kids that are out there that want to go into the trades and want to improve this world, it is inspiring. So I urge you, get in touch with Jim, and also look up Skills USA and dedicate someone at your chapter to be a liaison between those two resources. So next, let's talk about Day with a Facilities Professional. So, Day with a Facilities Professional. This is something we're really excited about, and I know the foundation is as well. AFE, Association of Facility Engineers in Silicon Valley, has been doing this event for over 50 years. It's a marvel. I think it taps into the most important piece of making FM, people aware of FM and making it relevant, which is it shows them what FM is. So how this works, Day with a Facilities Professional, is you have an organization, AFE, that brings young people in from local community colleges, actual universities and so forth in the area, and they might be studying FM as an FM degree or an FM related field, but they come to this this program at the beginning of the day. They have breakfast and they have a little talk and they talk about FM, but then they're broken off to go into various groups and actually tour a facility. Now you've led some of these tours, so what's that like for you as an educator and taking some of these kids around?
Well, last year when I did it, and you have to keep in mind that there are almost 100 students that are participating in this, and we have the luxury of being in Silicon Valley. There's a variety of facilities for these students to tour, and they get broken down to groups of about 6 or 8, and a tour guide takes them to a specific site. So last year I took a group of 6 students to Levi Stadium and in Santa Clara, which was pretty exciting because this building is still brand new. And they got to explore what the boilers, the chillers, the air handlers look like. We got to see solar panels, how they do lighting, the substation, and even down to the maintenance of the athletic field. So that was very inspiring, and it was
so they really get to see what a facility looks like.
Yes.
They're there. It's not theoretical for them. It's not in a book. They actually walk through it. And I think that's the key, because facilities, what does that mean unless you've actually seen it? And I think one of the cool things is after those tours, you guys then bring them back to the hosting company. You have dinner, and then there's a panel discussion. And I had the good fortune of being on one of those panels to actually interact with these young people, and it was in one sense, we're really champions of the field up there, trying to convince these young people to enter into the career field. But in another real sense, you are giving them a very defined explanation as to what FM is, so they know and they can make that choice. And when we say a defined explanation, we're talking about all the various FM and FM related fields that they could enter into. FM is a great springboard into other career opportunities. So when I was there as one year as a panelist, I noticed that there were sponsors in the room and companies. How does that work? What were those sponsors for?
Some of those sponsors were there to help provide funding for this, and they're a part of the cause, but also to sign some of these students up for internships and/or jobs.
So right on the spot there.
Right on the spot.
So I think that the thing that caught the interest of Jeff Toffel at the foundation was that this is a really good model that can be used. This isn't an AFE model across the country. This is something Silicon Valley AFE has done. And so we've been working on piloting this in a second IFMA chapter in Sacramento, and I believe next year is our target goal to have that done and really write the manual on how to do that. So this is something that your local chapters could do. Obviously, it's a partnership with AFE here, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a partnership with AFE around the country. It'd be great if you could, and you leverage both of those resources together. But this is another great idea. So taking a group of people, young people, bringing them together with facility managers, touring actual facilities, coming back and asking and answering questions, and then connecting them not only with your chapter, but with potential internships and jobs. Now that's a fast track.
This year, I took my students to an amusement park where they were able to see how roller coasters are built, how they are maintained, and the different components of it, including mechanical and electrical. These students also got to see daily operations and basic maintenance of the facilities we take for granted, such as cafeterias and bathrooms and things of that nature.
So, I mean, you can really see there's all these resources that the IFMA Foundation is working on connecting us with that are out there to solve this problem. And these are two really big ones that start right at the beginning of that pipeline with young people. Skills USA and Day with a Facilities Professional. But what about our next one? So EOFM. So what does EOFM stand for? It's Essentials of Facilities Management. And we all have heard about the CFM, the SFP, FMP, and so forth. But EOFM is really has been developed as that entry-level knowledge about basic knowledge of FM. And it's interesting. EOFM is really what connected us together from our chapters. You, Silicon Valley, me, Sacramento, and East Bay. I remember Larry Morgan was asked me to pitch to De Anza College with him to get them to take on the EOFM program as an actual credentialed course there. So we went down there, Larry and I, and we pitched to, I'd probably say there were about 80 kids in the room, and talked to them about EOFM to generate interest to see if this was a viable program. And what's interesting is you actually ended up getting certified, credentialed to teach EOFM, and you've taught it there as well as other places. So what's that experience been like for you actually teaching EOFM as an educator?
Larry Morgans, who is a longtime IFMA member, past recipient of the Distinguished Facility Manager Award, and he got me involved because he heard of my educational background. I used to be a high school teacher. And I thought of taking Essentials of Facility Management as a way to better serve the facility community and to better understand the needs of the facility managers that I already work for. So upon taking this course, I became inspired and wanted to get more into workforce development. And one of the ways that I was able to do that was to become certified teacher and begin teaching this course to the future facility managers.
It's not difficult to get an EOFM certification to teach it, correct? There's a form that you have to fill out. You have to have some references and so forth. But you being an actual credentialed educator, that fast track that process through for you as well, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first you have to take the course. You have your options of taking it online or with a certified instructor. They're few and far between, so you have to search for it. After you have passed the exam, you then have to co-teach with a certified EOFM instructor.
That would be like Larry Morgan, for example, in your case. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
So from there, you are a certified EOFM teacher, and you start looking for places to expand your craft.
Now, if I were, a community college student and I wanted to take this, what am I looking at in terms of curriculum?
Well, the course material is about 25 hours. There are 10 booklets, and it equals 25 hours worth of coursework. However, at IFMA Silicon Valley, when we teach the course, we add on 2 building tours, and we try to find internships to make this a more well-rounded type of certification for it. And
Is this your third round of teaching EOFM?
this is my 3rd round coming up, yes.
So, and another great connection with EOFM is being able to connect those students with companies for internships and for jobs. Because I remember after your first one, you were on the phone with me and a lot of other people saying, hey, I've got these students, they're great, they're bright, let's find them jobs. And we got several interviews, a few people jobs right away, a couple people took a little bit longer, but some of them have landed in some really, really good jobs. Following up like with Connie was one example that we all remember. She was your bright star, and just took a little bit of time, but they actually entered the field. So that's there's some success stories there as well.
She's working with CBRE. Yes, and so another way to get them deeper into the field is to have them go to chapter meetings. So we had these students come to chapter meetings as guests, and what that does is it allows them to meet people within the field of facility management, and they get to see the broader scope and the broader nature of what facility management actually is.
Yeah, I think that's the common thread in all of this is the local chapter being a hub for all of this, not only providing bandwidth and resources. I mean, it's a little commitment on your part to get certified to teach EOFM, but also to actually put in those credit hours and teaching that material. And there's an advantage, obviously, for us to do that for our industry, to bring people in, but also as, for you in your career field, you're actually bringing people into the industry so they can eventually become clients and people that are important to grow the industry in our market. So it's for people that have their head in the sand about this, that that the problem's just going to go away or somebody's going to solve it. We're the ones. It's really up to us to get our hands dirty and start feeding this pipeline with talent.
It's a win-win-win situation for all people involved. It's a win for me because I'm expanding my network. I'm helping these students find jobs within facilities in the area. The chapter wins because it increases membership.
Right.
We've taught almost 30 students so far, and half of them have become very involved in the chapter.
The next one I want to talk about is adult schools. So we obviously have this opportunity with high school youth to bring them in. There's a couple of opportunities. The OFM could fit in a high school environment. You have Skills USA addressing them, and I think even Day with a Facilities Professional is not just open to people in community colleges. That would be open to high schoolers as
Absolutely.
well. But when you get into that adult education, it's more of a different kind of environment with credentialing, with dollars, because you have to put people in seats, and that equates to dollars and so forth. So in your experience, because you've placed this in a couple of adult education environments, so what does that look like? Is it FMP as well, or is it just EOFM, or is it both in some of these organizations?
So taking a step back, one of the great advantages of adult schools is that you have people that are already in the workforce. So one of the disadvantages of high school and colleges is that they might not have any work experience. So adult schools are transitioning adults. Typically you would want your EOFM to be taught at adult schools. And then at the end of the EOFM certification, what would be the next step? If your area doesn't have any degree programs for these people to continue down that pipeline, one of the best things is to introduce them to the FMP. The FMP is your logical next step. So again, get them involved in the chapter and get them involved in the certification programs.
Really, in terms of the credentialing and so forth, and that big heavy lifting that the foundation's doing with universities and so forth, making FM a career of choice at that level, I think is important to mention that we're not just talking about, like you mentioned, we're not just talking about high schoolers, we're talking about transitioning adults. There's a huge opportunity here to transition into a different career field where there's a need and where the pay is relatively higher in comparison. So it's a great opportunity, and I don't know how many people haven't actually engaged the foundation, looked at some of the marketing materials that they've created, some of the studies. Some of them are pretty slick and very helpful to try to do this in your local region, where your local chapter serves, to talk to some of these facilities and so forth. And it's interesting, I've got my what would KIT do bracelet on, because I really believe this is something KIT would be doing. This is something that those heavy hitters in facilities, the Larry Morgans of the world, Peggy McCarthy's, Tina Schaus and so forth, understand this inflection point that we're dealing with now. And we have the resources within IFMA, within the IFMA Foundation to do this. What we need is chapter engagement. We need people at the local. This is a lot of time on your part and my part to do this, and fortunately work for great companies that support that and understand the value. And I think once the wheels have been invented, to give those to the other people in the local chapter to be able to do these things without that heavy lifting. So I just encourage everybody to reach out to the foundation and see if there's anything they can do to help, bandwidth-wise, volunteer-wise. Take one hole on your golf tournament each year and dedicate that to the foundation. So that tournament's that whole sponsorship that money goes to the foundation. It has to become a focus. And there's somebody could say to you, well, you're at Silicon Valley. You guys have all the bandwidth in the world. You guys have all. Is that really true, or does it still come down to the fact that a few people really grab the bull by the horns here?
Well, Silicon Valley is one of the most busiest places in the world, and everybody is overwhelmed. But if you're a believer in the cause, you find a way to make it happen.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of EFP. You guys have really set the bar there. I know Russ Goldman and Caitlin Scatman created the EFP program down there, which is extremely successful. And just EFP is Emerging Facilities Professionals. I actually, when I was president of IFMA East Bay, I had them come up and talk to my group at our strategic planning about starting an EFP in East Bay, which we started 2 years ago, off of their model. I didn't invent it, we didn't invent it, we maybe made a couple of tweaks for our region, but how do you see EFP, where let's say you have somebody who has graduated college, they've entered into facilities, they're that under 35 group, and they're in the chapter. How do you see utilizing an EFP program to further credentialing within the chapter?
Well, as you were saying before, only 8% of facility professionals are below the age of 35. So this is a great way for young professionals to meet together, to travel down the path with a greater understanding of what they're going through. EFP is another way for these students to become more involved in the chapter with people that are like-minded.
Let's take somebody maybe that's fast-tracked through the path. You have a high schooler that has access to EOFM, in the perfect world, right? That high schooler then decides, I'm going to choose FM as a career path. Therefore, I don't need to go to an expensive 4-year university for a bachelor's degree. I'm going to maybe go get a community college degree in kind of a companion area. Could be something in drafting, could be something business administration. What a good pairing there, right? They get that, and then they come out of that with that associate's or that credential, and then going to a potential employer and saying, not only do I understand facilities through EOFM, I have this companion degree, I'm involved in the local chapter, okay, so I have all of this support from my local chapter, I'm an emerging facilities professional. So that person versus the person who has no FM knowledge whatsoever coming in for a potential job as a coordinator or an intern perhaps, they're going to stand out. They then get that job. They then are part of the chapter as an emerging facilities professional and have access to all of the heavy hitters in their chapter. When they run into a problem, they can just ask their fellow FMer who's been there for 35 years, hey, how do I do this? Right? So they're already light years ahead, right, in that regard, and then they get their FMP. So now you have a credentialed, certified facilities professional that you've organically grown from the ground up, who, if they stay in the field, are going to become a chapter member of this organization for many, many years to come. And that's a success story that they can then tell other young people. So it kind of feeds on itself, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Christian, I think for me, to sum all this up, we've got Skills USA, contact Jim Zerbel, Facilithon, FM Pipeline. He's done all the heavy lifting. For a day with a facilities professional, you can reach out to Christian or myself, and there's also lots of other people in Silicon Valley you can talk to about that as well. We can talk to you. I know we're looking at piloting this at another chapter in Sacramento and should have a manual for that next year. But I know Jeff Toffel's in full support of us trying to roll this out in other areas. I would say reach out to the foundation and see how you can help, how you can donate, how you can sponsor. It's incredibly important right now. And then in terms of EOFM, is maybe looking at getting somebody in your chapter certified to teach EOFM, maybe multiple people, and looking at getting this out into your local regions. And none of those require you invent anything. It's just following what's already been there.
All the resources are available.
Yeah. So again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. It's Wayne Weitzel from DFS Green.
Christian Palekia with Slater Construction.
Thanks a lot.